Dobrodošli u Kulturu otvorenog koda, emisiju o računarima, otvorenom kodu, slobodnom softveru i Ubuntu GNU Linuxu. Moje ime je Srđan Udovički i bit ću vaš domaćin. U početku, dok su računari bili prisutni u velikim laboratorijama i na univerzitetima, sav softver je bio besplatan i mogao je da se modifikuje prema potrebama. Međutim, s popularnošću računara i njihovom evolucijom, s početka 70. godina 20. veka sve je počelo da se menja. Uvedena je vlasnička licenca. Na MIT univerzitetu, kolevci programerstva, programeri su se pripremali za novo vreme. Priča kaže da je točak promjena pokrenuo jedan umreženi štampač koji je često pravio probleme u svom radu. Jedan od programera, Richard Stallman, zamolio je kolegu koji je napisao driver za štampač da mu pošalje kod kako bi ispravio grešku. Međutim, molba nije urodila plodom, ali je zato iznedrila novu revolucionarnu ideju. 1984. godine Stallman osniva GNU projekat sa ciljem stvaranja potpuno slobodnog operativnog sistema. Nakon toga, Stallman osniva i fondaciju slobodnog softvera, Free Software Foundation, neprofitabilnu asocijaciju sa ciljem podrške i distribucije slobodnog softvera. Također kreira i GPL, General Public License, licencu koja dozvoljava sigurnu i legalnu distribuciju slobodnog softvera. Naziv GNU je u stvari rekluzivni akronim koji je veoma popularan i danas u Linux svetu i znači GNU iznad Unix.
In the late 70s and early 1980s, Richard Stallman was doing artificial intelligence research and coding at the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. Richard had a number of negative experiences during that period which soured him on the whole idea of commercial software.
Such as?
Some code that he wanted to work on and wanted to fix was locked up, and he couldn't get the company that owned the code to let him fix it, even though it would have been to their advantage to do so.
And that put me into a moral dilemma, you see, because to get one of the modern computers of the day, which was the early 80s, you would have to get a proprietary operating system. The developers of those systems didn't share with other people. Instead, they tried to control the users, dominate the users, restrict them, saying, if to get this system, you have to sign a promise you won't share with anybody else. And to me, that was essentially a promise to be a bad person, to betray the rest of the world, cut myself off from society, from the cooperating community. And I had already experienced what happened when other people did that to us, when they refused to share with us because they had signed these contracts, and it hurt the whole lab, kept us from doing useful things before. So I just wasn't going to do that. I felt this is wrong. I am not going to live this way.
And from experiences like this, he developed a profound hostility to the idea of intellectual property in software. He eventually acted this out by founding the Free Software Foundation.
So I looked for another alternative, and I realized I was an operating system developer. If I were to develop another operating system, and then as the author encourage everyone to share it, say, everyone, you come and get it, use this, form a new community, not only could I give myself a way to keep using computers without betraying other people, but I'd give it to everybody else too. Everybody would have a way out of that moral dilemma. And so I realized this was what I had to do with my life. I actually began the project in January of 1984. That's when I resigned from my job at MIT to start developing the GNU operating system. Now, I should explain that the name GNU is a hack because it's a recursive acronym. It stands for GNU's not Unix. You see, so the G in GNU stands for GNU. And what the name means is I was developing a system that was like the Unix operating system, but was not the Unix operating system. This was a different system. We would have to write it completely from scratch because Unix was proprietary. We were forbidden to share Unix. We couldn't use Unix. It was useless for a community. So we had to write a replacement for it.
Pod okriljem GNU projekta stvoren je sav softver novog slobodnog sistema izuzev kernela, odnosno samog srca operativnog sistema. 1991. godine Linus Torvalds, student Finskog univerziteta, napisao je stabilan i funkcionalan kernel nazvan po njemu Linux. Stavljen po GPL licencu, kod kernela bio je dostupan internetu. Spajanjem kernela napisanog od strane Linusa i prethodno napisanog softvera u okviru GNU projekta stvorene su mnoge slobodne distribucije, najčešće nazivane Linux distribucije.
To kind of explain what Linux is, you have to explain what an operating system is. And the thing about an operating system is that you're never ever supposed to see it because nobody really uses an operating system. People use programs on their computer. And the only mission in life of an operating system is to help those programs run. So an operating system never does anything on its own. It's only waiting for the programs to ask for certain resources or ask for a certain file on the disk or ask for the programs to connect them to the outside world. And then the operating system steps in and tries to make it easy for people to write programs.
Zvanična maskota Linuxa je pingvin koji se naziva Tux. 9. aprila Linux je napunio 20 godina. Pogledajmo oficijalni klip koji na zanimljiv način govori o istoriji Linuxa.
It was August of 1991, and a 20-year-old computer science student named Linus Torvalds sat down at his computer in Helsinki to post what is now one of the most famous entries in computing history. Hello, everybody out there. I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be anything big and professional like GNU. It probably will never support anything other than AT hard disks, as that's all I have. Well, word of Linux open source project quickly spread around the globe, and developers from all over contributed their code. Linus named his OS kernel Linux and chose a penguin as its mascot, after a little incident at the zoo. He soon made a very important decision that would shape Linux's future just as much as the technology. He chose the GPL license created by a visionary named Richard Stallman. The Linux kernel, along with the GPL license and other GNU components, revolutionized the computing industry with a few very simple yet very important freedoms. The freedom to use the software for any purpose. The freedom to change the software to suit your needs. The freedom to share the software with your friends and neighbors, and the freedom to share the changes you make. These radical ideas fueled its spread around the world and, somewhat paradoxically, its rise from a hobbyist experiment to the foundation of a large and thriving commercial ecosystem. Companies built businesses around Linux. In 1999, Red Hat's stock tripled as it became the first Linux company to go public. That same year, IBM spent $1 billion to improve and advertise Linux.
Does he have a name? His name is Linux.
Soon, Linux was knocking out industry heavyweights and fueling the rise of the internet with its free software. In short, Linux revolutionized computing. But whenever something is this disruptive, there's bound to be competitive crossfire. But Linux not only survived, it thrived. Today, the kernel development community numbers in the thousands, with hundreds of companies collaborating on Linux development. Every 3 months, another version of Linux is released. So, where is Linux today? running in 75% of stock exchanges worldwide, and powering the servers that deliver Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, eBay, and Google. You use Linux literally every time you surf the internet. It's in your phone, in your TV, running 95% of supercomputers, and in many of the devices you use every day. Linux is everywhere. And the Helsinki-based programmer who started it all? He orchestrates this worldwide army of developers from his home office in Portland, Oregon, as a fellow at the Linux Foundation. As we celebrate 20 years of Linux, we can all see ourselves in its story. Thank you for being a part of its first 20 years.
Šta tačno znači slobodan softver? Koje slobode karakterišu otvoren kod? Slobodan softver označava mogućnost da koristite i menjate softver po vašim potrebama. To znači da imate 4 osnovne slobode. Slobodu da se program pokreće u bilo koju svrhu. Slobodu da se program proučava i menja, odnosno da se prilagođava specifičnim potrebama korisnika. Slobodu da se program umnožava i distribuira da bi se pomoglo bližnjem i slobodu da se program poboljšava i da se te promjene puštaju u javnost, tako da cijela zajednica ima koristi. Za razliku od vlasničkog modela koji recimo koristi Microsoft i koji ne dozvoljava korisniku da kopira, distribuira ili menja program, slobodan softver kao alternativu daje korisniku mogućnost da kopira, distribuira i menja softver prema svojim potrebama. U želju da se što pre opet vidimo na istom mestu, s poštovanjem, vaš Srđan Udovički, a.k.a. Rainmaker.
Okay.